What's going on, guys? Vulkan here, and you guys might remember a video I made back in June for a game called Tainted Grail. It's a dark fantasy, turn-based role-playing game that takes place in a gothic retelling of King Arthur. And when I reviewed the game, I really liked it. I enjoyed the direction it was taking, the music, the voice acting, and the art style were all fantastic, and it gave really a strong sense of immersion, and I felt like it was a really good early access debut for the game. So let's fast forward 3 months, and we have our first major update to the game called Seeds of Corruption. And let me just say, this update makes the game look completely different than it did in June. They overhauled the roguelike mode called Conquest to offer a story rather than just dropping players into the middle of chaos, which is great. We have new RPG systems to help with character building, to provide depth, way better visuals, brand new UI, and there's a few other things that we're going to touch on. So to get things started, I did want to talk about my experience with the new version of Conquest. So you're going to start off with a new tutorial that shows you the basics, and then you get to choose a class. So at the start, you can only choose the Weird Hunter right now, but after you finish the tutorial, you get to choose from a few other classes that might suit your playstyle a little bit better. I know they did for me. So the other ones you have available are the Pathfinder, who prioritizes defense, a Berserker, who can activate Lifesteal as their ultimate, a Blood Mage, who sacrifices health to deal big damage, and a Summoner, who can raise an army of Golems, Worms, and Abomination. Now, there are 4 other classes that aren't available yet, 3 of which belong to a faction called the Fallen Kamelot, which has me thinking that these are going to be a knight or some sort of like a dark paladin style class, kind of building on that King Arthur of Camelot theme, the corruption sort of theme. So really excited to see what we have there, and I hope we get to see those Fallen Camelot folks a little bit sooner than later. So like I mentioned before, Conquest is their rogue-like mode. The game is split into 2 halves. You have the story half, which is not available right now, and you have the Conquest half, which is available, and that's the rogue-like section. So you can do independent runs, you can create a new class, and really you kind of go until you die type of thing. So the whole objective in Conquest is to explore maps, and then you kill these legendary creatures to unlock new paths on that map. And these legendaries get more difficult the higher you go, but you're not just fighting them, you're also fighting the environment. So you have to use these candles to help protect you against the weird. And if you don't manage them properly, then you can actually get caught without protection and end up giving yourself a nasty debuff, which could lead to your death. So keep that in mind. That's one of the biggest things that I learned right out of the gate. Manage your candles properly. They do have a time limit. They give you 5 to start out, and then as you kill legendary creatures, they give you 3 more to use. So you're only going to have a certain amount that you have to stretch across each zone before you go fight the legendary to get more candles. Now, in the previous version of Conquest, things were pretty rough and unfair at times. Like, I'm not gonna lie, there were some instances where it just felt hopeless. And there are certain situations where it was just lose-lose, no matter what you did. You didn't have enough blocks, you didn't have enough health, you didn't have the right cards to survive the encounter, and with this update, things feel much smoother. You're faced with easier opponents at the beginning and eventually work your way up to more challenging fights with those legendary monsters, and those legendary monsters are going to require coordination planning. So don't get me wrong, right? I don't want to misconstrue the difficulty of the game. It is a hard game, but they did give us some training wheels at the beginning to help get our feet wet, and this definitely helps make the game feel more fun and less of like a punishing experience. I feel like I can actually sit down and play this game for a long time, make some progress, versus just landing like a bad lineup of enemies and getting rolled right off the bat. So I think this is going to be helpful for newer players and people who might not be used to roguelikes and the crushing difficulty that comes with those type of games. This really helps you kind of get into the game first and then slowly ramps up, and you can tell it's a completely different experience than last time for me, and I was able to get deeper and deeper into the game than I was on the previous iteration. So my first run, I was able to get to the 3rd legendary creature before I stopped to try another class. And the build I was using on that particular one was an AoE Weird Hunter that consistently dealt passive damage each turn. So I took all of the passives and all of the runestones I could that reduced enemy armor and cleaved every time my turn began. So I had my attack damage plus my passive cleave damage and my armor reduction all hitting enemies and creating a really, really good kit that would kill off any enemies that had a sliver of health remaining. And it worked especially well against the abominations, because these creatures, when you kill them, they're going to spawn smaller enemies with a little bit of health that deal a lot of damage. So you can kill them, and then my cleave would typically either clean up a lot of those or bring them down to very low health, so then on my next turn I can take care of them. Now, I did run into an issue with legendary creatures though, because there were some times where I didn't have a block card available, and that caused me to take some pretty big spike damage. I had to drink potions to get through it. So that's something that I did need to true up on that particular build. I had a bit more defense to make sure I didn't get stranded with an empty hand to a boss that was going to one-shot me. So one tip I'll give you guys is, before you get to the legendary creatures, don't just beeline straight for them. You need to build up your character, obviously. So make sure to manage your candles, but explore as much of the map as you can, because the map is going to be littered with treasure chests that contain helpful items, as well as rune stones, which we'll get into in a second. But there's also strange characters you can interact with. And some of these characters, through your dialogue options, will give you either buffs or powerful cards. And these powerful cards are known as legendary cards, and they usually have 0 cost, and you can only use them one time. So once you use it, it is deleted from your deck and you cannot get it again on that particular run. Some other ones will attack you. So if you don't go through the dialogue options correctly, they're going to basically retaliate, and you're going to end up having a spontaneous fight on your hands that you didn't plan for, and it might lead to your death, because these are some pretty powerful things every now and then. So keep your guard up and make sure you choose correctly. Also, I will say this is a very brutal and unforgiving world. So when you're going through the dialogue options, make sure to keep that in the back of your mind. Don't always play the nice person, because nice people finish last. Keep that in mind. So that wraps up my experience from Conquest, but they also added some big changes to character development that gives the game more of an RPG feel that helps give Tainted Grail a little bit more depth. And the first new system is all about improving your gear. So as you're going through battling, you're going to see these new runestones that'll drop from just about every encounter, and they give a buff depending on where you slot them. So if we take a look at the cracked Gar, for example, you can see that if we slot it in a weapon, it'll increase our damage by 3 points. If we move it into armor, we will hit all enemies for 5 damage each turn. This goes into my AoE Cleave Hunter that I had earlier. So putting it in there allows me to cleave everything for 5 damage, and that's each turn, not each battle. So very powerful. Runestones can also be moved around whenever you want. So don't feel like, oh man, I put this one in the weapon, it's stuck in the weapon. No. Take it, you can move it around, min-max your character however you would like. And these are also separated into different rarities. So you might see ones that drop common, then rare, then mythical. And the ones that are higher rarity obviously give better bonuses, but they're also separated into tiers. So once you get 3 of the same stone, you can combine them into a more powerful version of that stone, which gives better buffs. And that's kind of the progression system when it comes to runestones. Find the stones you really want to use for your character, see if you can get duplicates, and then take those and combine them into the more powerful versions of themselves. So in terms of slots, you're going to have 6 total rune slots. You're going to have 3 for your weapon and 3 for your armor, and these will unlock as you defeat legendary creatures. So you defeat a legendary creature, and then you get a choice. Do you want to unlock an armor slot or a weapon slot? You can either go all weapon, all armor, depending on how you want to kind of do it. I went back and forth, kind of depending on what runes that I had. If I had one I was really looking forward to, then I'd prioritize that one. I need to have an armor slot open so I can put this in there. So the runestone system has been a great addition so far. I think, it's really what the game needed to help give a sense of progression, but also keep battles interesting. Because before, battles rewarded mostly consumables and gold, which are always great, right? You can use those, but it didn't feel exciting. I wasn't excited to get, this flower that healed me for a little bit. I'm more excited to see, what does this new runestone give me? So this definitely helps with that. Now, the other system that helps give that sense of progression is the passive system. So as you play through the game, you're going to be given a choice of 3 passives at certain milestones. Choose the one you want, and these are going to be how you're going to craft your build. So they could have things like gain extra energy at the start of a battle, increase your armor stat, or you could have powerful things like having your ultimate meter carry over between fights, letting you use it more often. Because baseline, your ultimate resets whenever you start over on a fight. This allows you to continue using it, and in my opinion, it's a no-brainer choice. Get this one as quickly as you can. So beyond these minor passives, you're also going to have things called reforges. And reforges are like super passive bonuses that unlock at level 10 and level 20, and these specifically augment your ultimate ability. They can be things like, whenever you kill an enemy with your ultimate, heal yourself for 7% of your max health, or ultimates only use 50% of your charges instead of 100%. And just as another tip, things that restore your health are extremely powerful in this game because you don't have any sort of passive health regen. So if you can snag a passive that heals you, it's a top tier bonus in my mind, absolutely. Because otherwise you're going to be just slamming potions, you're going to have to try to manage it during combat, you might have a legendary card that full heals you that you have to use when you don't really want to. There's a lot that can be mitigated by having a passive that gives you some extra health. So we've covered how you build your character with passives and runestones, but that's not the main thing you're going to be interacting with on a daily basis, right? There's going to be a deck of abilities that you get to create, and each class starts with a few cards that they can use to cover the basics. But as you kill enemies and level up, you're going to be given another choice of 3 cards. Pick the one you want, it gets added to the deck. And this is another form of development that helps you create the hero you want to play as. For instance, let's say you're looking for like a defensive juggernaut that slowly chips away enemies, right? Outlast your enemies. You can take cards that give you extra energy and block, and then combine it with passives that allow blocks to persist across turns, and another card that allows you to duplicate cards that are played. So you can kind of manage your energy, get some buy one, get one style deals, and this gives you more attacks to use while keeping yourself protected. Or you can go the complete opposite way, do a glass cannon approach, allows you to deal massive damage, almost no defense, but it's more of those I'm going to kill them before they kill me style of gameplay. Which either one works. I'm more of a defensive guy, so that's what I went for. But there are lots of different ways to build out your deck for each run. And that's one of the things that I've enjoyed about Tainted Grail. Cards and passives seem interesting and synergistic rather than siloed. Now, one thing they had on the previous version that I did not see this version is gear, actual gear, armor and weapon drops. I'm curious if those are still going to be in the game, if they're not going to be in the game. I haven't seen them quite yet, but I would really like for them to keep that in the game and use those as a way to add more total rune slots. You know, you have a couple commons, sure, you have 3 slots for runes on your common weapon and common armor, but as you move up into mythical, legendary, relic, ancient status, those are going to be the ones where it's like you have 5 rune slots, 6 rune slots, and you can really kind of kit out your character to be a complete badass in every single way possible. So I'd really like to see them keep that in there because I think it'd be beneficial for the game in the long run. Now, on the flip side, I think the most surprising thing about this update was the new leaderboards that they added. So each week there's a leaderboard event with rewards to earn. I haven't tried this out yet, but I know this is going to be big for some folks. It shows how much damage you dealt to a boss among other stats. It's going to help you earn a spot in the rankings. You can do speed runs, things like that. So there's going to be a lot kind of going into this to help get some community sort of engagement going for the game, which I'm really excited for. So overall, Seeds of Corruption has been a solid update to the game. I feel like Tainted Grail understands its identity, and it really understands what it is and what it isn't. And it's focusing on improving the things in that space that makes it as strong as it can be within its identity. So if you're someone who likes classic RPGs, turn-based games, or roguelike games, then I would definitely recommend giving this game a shot. It's currently on sale for $18 on Steam. It's $25 full price. And as a side note, they are working on adding the campaign teaser back into the game. In the previous iteration, you could play the first few hours of the campaign. This update broke it. So they're repairing that, and they're going to be adding it back over the next couple weeks. So it will be there, and you can experience a little bit of the story. So I want to hear from you guys. What do you guys think so far of Tainted Grail? Have you played it? Do you want to play it? Does this sound interesting to you? Or is this one that you're going to pass on? Let's get talking in the comment section below. As always, guys, thank you so much for the support. This has been Vulkan, and I'll talk to you guys next time.